You just let me know when we are live, and I
I
will
have
kick
I
us
have hit
off.
I have hit the button. You guys are you're good to lead us in whenever you're ready, Dan. And remember, the safe word is egg salad.
For what? Why would we need a safe word?
If my microphone acts
Welcome
up,
to
just
episode 38 of the Pregame Network podcast, everybody. This is Dan Anthony and finally fucking Joe joined
yeah,
in.
Joe's back. Ain't that a treat?
That was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, so okay, another week, another bit of gaming news to go over.
Yeah.
Um, I've been playing a little bit more things than usual because I
Hmm.
went back to my old job, so I have much more time to kill to play different things, which is always a plus. Um,
Yes.
but since we are finally graced with Joe's presence, I'm gonna let him go first. What have you been playing this week, Joe?
Oh boy. This week, or do
I
you want me
wasn't
to
prepared for this.
recap the whole like fucking however long I've been gone? Because
Yeah, you may as well go for it because even though Dan's had a bit more free time, I've been playing pretty much the same shit, so it's going to be quick for us, I
right.
think.
So I have amassed, due to the Steam Winter Sale, I have amassed quite a backlog. I have purchased a shit ton of games. I purchased Dragon's Dogma 2 because it was on sale. I
Huzzah.
purchased I purchased V Rising,
Oh yeah, how do
which
you like that? Because I have like 20 some odd hours in that game,
I like
and
it a lot.
that was
I like it.
before the 1.0 launch. We could talk about that later.
Yeah, I like V-Rising a lot. I've been playing a lot of that. Been playing a ton of Warframe, which
Shocker.
after the 1999 update,
Yeah,
I
I
have to
kind of want to
say,
pick your brain about that a little bit.
oh man, I have a lot of things to say. It kind of does its usual Warframe thing of like kind of essentially making a content island, but in a good way that's not necessarily bad.
Uh,
Um, Depends on if it's right up your alley or you can appreciate that kind of shit. Some people do, some people don't. But so there's Warframe, V Rising, obviously, my usual Helldivers too, a little bit. God, so much shit. I've been playing so much stuff, and a couple of things that I want to play but haven't yet because I want to record it, like
Mm.
Dark Sector and but
Oh
well,
yes, we've
Dark
been talking about
Sector, like
we
like
we
the
yes,
pre like the precursor to Warframe, that
yes,
Dark
yeah,
yeah,
Sector.
the very same one.
yes,
I know it
yeah.
like it comes up a lot whenever I've been talking to Joe and Harrison about finally sitting down and playing that because I haven't played that since it was new when people were still talking about like it is Gears of War but different, even though they have nothing fucking in common outside of the perspective.
Yeah, I have never. I also purchased It Takes Two. That's another thing.
Oh,
I purchased a game that Anthony doesn't give a shit about for reasons that I don't really understand. It's really just a puzzle game with some kind
It
of like
takes
mild.
two.
is it that
No,
We
intellectual crap, the
had
Talos
Anthony.
principle
Anthony, we
policy?
had a whole plan to play that game and record our playthrough, and we just never did it. It
It
was it
Takes
was
Two.
the Joseph
You're
Farah.
no, you're talking a Brother's Tale or
No, 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 no. We played a way out
Two's
for like
Company.
a
No,
couple
ways it
hours.
way out. Yes, yes.
Yeah, we
So
played a way out for a couple hours, but we also planned on playing It Takes Two and just never got around to it.
Yes, yes,
so
that is very
right.
true.
So
Joe's about to tell us about the Talos fallacy or whatever the fuck it's called. Go
the
ahead. Is it
the Talos Phallos.
the Talos fallacy?
Yes, I actually did play the first Talos Principle and I enjoyed it a lot. Anthony was just like, "Oh, it's pseudo intellectual. I hate this," and then he
That
was a
conversation went
big
on for
cunt
an
about
hour.
it.
He's paraphrasing. I sounded a lot smarter in that conversation about why I did not care for it, but that's a conversation for another day.
So Anthony complained and drooled on the table a little bit when we were talking about it, and then
Piece of shit.
I enjoyed the game, and then I bought Talos Principle 2 because I like the puzzles, and I thought some of the like dialogue with the computer or whatever was a little interesting.
Very, very deep stuff.
Yeah, purchased Hollow Knight, purchased so much shit, a lot of stuff.
Hollow Knight's the one everybody always talks about when it comes
Yeah,
to like indies and Metroidvanias and stuff like that.
yeah. But what I've been playing mostly Warframe, a lot of Helldivers 2 over the past month, and then this week especially I've been playing a lot of V Rising because it was on sale and I bought it, and then I started playing it and I played solo, and it was it was pretty challenging, and then I started playing with Courtney, and we it's not nearly as hard with other people around. So
I can imagine.
So-
Yeah, I would play that with you. When I started playing it, I would say like it was still over 6 months away from its 1.0 launch. And my biggest issue with it is like I would venture out at night, and then the day and night cycle would roll around, and it would turn into daytime, and then like half the map, I guess, or the field the immediate field that you play on is essentially restricted because you step into the sun and you take damage like pretty quickly.
oh yeah,
So
shit's on you.
yeah, and like I would always venture out to collect resources or upgrades or whatever it is. Overstay my welcome, the sun would come up. I would either die or I'd have to stick to the shadows and find a way out. And like I never, how many hours do I have in that game? I have
See,
15.
Yeah,
So-
I'm very good at being a fucky asshole and hiding like in behind light poles to avoid the sun. So you like you can really pull off cheesy shit like that. Like I am just constantly hiding in like a fucking shadow. Like I mean, it's like
See,
a fucking
my
kids
problem
game.
was that I was playing it like it was Diablo, and it's not.
It's I don't know if I would say it's like almost like a mix of like I don't know if you've like played like League of Legends. You know what I mean? But
I have, but I don't like it.
Yeah, I've dishonored myself with that game at one point or another. So
Kinda fun to watch.
I have like mild experience with it. I'm not going to say I'm good or bad at it. But I just know that there's a lot of like skill shots in that game, and V Rising is chock full of that. So it's very similar in that regard to League of Legends. I played Diablo. Diablo seemed to be more about like I don't know, like I played melee characters. I didn't do like a lot of like shooting and stuff. But I've been
Which
making
Diablo?
extensive. I played Diablo 3, not the
Okay.
what's the most okay. Completely exclude the mobile one. What is the most recent one? Diablo 4.
4. Diablo 4 is the most recent one.
Diablo 3 was the first
Okay.
actual Diablo game that I had played because I did not have a computer capable of playing the other ones when they came out.
Okay.
So, yeah. But
Um,
I played a barbarian in that game.
Mhm.
And I think I played a monk. So neither of those really used any range shit, even comparable to like using a crossbow. But yeah, it's a lot of skill shots, and I'm not bad at that sort of thing. So it's like I'm not like I'm killing the bosses just by like fucking whittling them down with like stuff like that. But it's I think it's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't
Fun,
jumped
fun.
back into V Rising since last time I played it was May 24th, 2023. So it's been a while.
They
Mm.
probably added a lot of stuff. There's a lot
Yeah.
of new weapons, great swords, whips. Fucking Simon Belmont is in the game. Things like that.
Yeah, I'll have
Lots
to
of
jump
weird-
back in sooner or later. I mean, I have the time now. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Oh,
Well,
why not?
Anthony, inform us of what you've been up to this week.
So, nothing too exciting. Just nothing brand new. I'll have more to say next week because I've still been playing the Citadel, and I tried a little bit of Beyond the Citadel. And I
Oh, hold
kind
on
of
a
touched.
second. Hold on. But before you continue, so I recently shared my Steam library with someone, and I got access to like all of their games.
Yeah.
And in their library was Beyond Citadel. I'm like, oh, like I've been meaning to try the first one. Like now I
Yeah.
at least have access to the second one. So
Yeah.
Citadel and Beyond Citadel, they are officially on my radar as of last week, and
Okay.
I do plan on
Yes.
playing them soon.
Yes. I don't have too much to say outside of what I said last week. Next week I'll probably just have my final thoughts on them because I'll be done with them by then. I basically I'm almost done with the Citadel. I tried a little bit of Beyond the Citadel, and I can already see like some stark differences despite the core basically being the same. I'm having a lot of fun with them. It's just it's nice to mix things up with the boomer shooter every now and again, but aside from that, it's really just the usual. Playing some Guilty Gear and Street Fighter with Harrison. In my spare time, I'm playing Genshin Impact and Girls Frontline, and that's just how I kill time in between editing videos.
Genshin Impact.
Yeah, you
Really?
missed that. You
I
Oh
did
yeah,
not see
this
that
was a
coming.
whole
Yeah,
thing, Joe.
that's like a
Yeah.
whole thing. I'll talk to you about it later. Just basically, it's a time killing game that I have in between videos, and it's cozy. And a buddy of mine plays it, so he's big into it. But
I thought you were going to tell me you were playing like a ton of like Marvel Rivals or something. Because
that was the
too.
last thing I was gonna get on. I don't have much more to say about Marvel Rivals outside of the fact that season 1 just started. But I have been playing a lot of that with Luke, Nick, and Harrison, just because that's similar. I'll just paraphrase just because I explained it to Dan already. But like back in the day when Overwatch was the thing to play, Overwatch is something that like everybody had. So it's like, okay, everybody's home, let's play it. But that's really the only time I do play it. Except for, oddly enough, occasionally, and this is an aside, but I'll occasionally just have the game on because Spider-Man is obviously in Marvel Rivals, and the swinging mechanics in Marvel Rivals are shockingly better than like 75% of the Spider-Man video game library. So it's just fun to like go into the training mode and just swing around because I can't find my fucking copy of any of the Spider-Man games I own. It's kind of sad. And
have you played the PlayStation's the Insomniac Spider-Man game?
I've played the first one. I have no interest in Miles Morales, and I kind of want to try the second one, but it's just like it's a conversation for another time, but I take issue with like the pacing and the content in the Insomniac Spider-Man games. I think they nailed movement and traversal and the swinging. I think it's as close as anybody else has gotten to the movie Spider-Man 2 game as far as how fun it is to move around. And I don't hate Yuri Lowenthal like some people do as Spider-Man, but yeah, I have played those games too. But basically that's to get back on track for me is like it's just I have my little corner of fighting games and like the gacha games and Marvel Rivals, and in my spare time aside from all the other shit I have been getting through the Citadel games, and they'll hopefully be done. They should be done by the time we record next.
All right, cool.
What about you, Dan? Anything new? Or just the same?
I've got like a smorgasbord of things going on. So since I went back to my old job, I have a lot of like free time in the latter half of my evening.
Mm-hmm.
Marvel Rivals has been a big one lately. Play with a full 6-stack, and it's fun enough. I would never play that game solo, but it's good enough where I actually so when we played last night, and Harrison was Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah.
That was the first time I've ever seen that character been played. I actually was just playing him like an hour ago, and I actually like that character a lot. Like him and Punisher have been my go-tos. I've been playing a lot of Marvel Rivals lately, a lot of Path of Exile 2. That hasn't really changed in the past couple weeks. The game is like surprisingly challenging and has a really big emphasis on boss fights. So like I'll get stuck on a boss and spend like an hour or two trying to beat it. But that's been a big one for me the past couple of weeks. It still is for Path of Exile 2. I played a little bit of Delta Force yesterday just because I had the time. I know I said that I was going to put it down for a while, but I felt like playing it, so I did. And I actually started playing the campaign for Call of Duty World at War again. I just felt like going back and revisiting it. So that was something else that I've been playing.
That's a treat. They're going back to the older Call of Duty campaigns, like between 2 and Black Ops. Those are very well crafted.
I even do like Black Ops 2.
But
I like Black Ops 2 a lot.
I'm not a huge fan of just the setting, but I understand why you would enjoy it from like just as an overall package. You know, Black Ops 2 is very solid.
Well, I'll never get the multiplayer back, so I've accepted that. But I like Black Ops 1, 2. I actually did enjoy the Infinite Warfare campaign, but I just for whatever reason I felt like going back and playing World at War. I think it was like, isn't Reznov in that game? I didn't get that far into it, but I remember all the Reznov missions, and I was like, I want to go back and play that, so I downloaded it, and I have been playing it through that.
Yeah, you shouldn't be too far off. It's fairly early in the game.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I mean, I kind of flew through that, but yeah, that's essentially what I've been playing this week.
If nothing new major going on, that's perfectly fine. We gave Joe all the time to make up for lost time. That's fine by me.
I do plan on reinstalling Warframe and trying to progress to the point where I can play the 1999 update. I don't really know much about that update aside from it takes place in 1999. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of why I wanted to pick Joe's brain about that a little bit, because that's like his game. So learn me something, Joe.
Go for it.
So it's like, how do I put this? It seriously tries to like kind of like tickle your fucking nostalgia bone,
right? Like, which I assumed that, and I was okay with it.
Right, like down from like the shitty instant messengers and like the way like Windows 98 looked, like all of the sound design and everything, like the enemies they make like fucking it's almost as if like some of them are like probably like unique sounds, but some of them sound so close to like
What?
noises that you might have heard
I'm,
from like AOL. When the enemies that
Oh.
die
I'm
that attack
expecting you to
like
say
They
like
have 90s like audio clips.
an enemy
Yes.
just opens his mouth and like a dial-up tone just comes out of his fucking
yeah, no,
mouth.
I swear to God, some of them are like that, and it's like they're called the tech rot. It's like
Okay.
it's almost like the infested, but they kind of like use, instead of like just straight biomass, they use like technology as well. So it's like they're like interesting enemies. And I
Is there
mean,
anything different about the 1999 update that changes the game? Still, like, what am I trying to say here? Like, what does the 1999 update do differently than Warframe just being Warframe?
so it almost seems like every kind of like I don't know I don't know if you would call it like an expansion, quote unquote. Ha, they don't really like they've been on like the trend of adding like a fucking an open world area every time they've added one. They added the Plains of Eidolon, which is like a kind of like
That was like
Grineer
the first
focused-
one, right?
Right, that was the
That's the
Grineer
one with
one
the
on
fishing,
Earth.
right?
They all have fishing.
Okay.
Yeah, Anthony, you fucking idiot.
Yeah,
God.
dumbass. So
Fuck.
there's the Plains of Eidolon had Cetus. That was very plainsy, which is well, anyway. There was Fortuna, which is like a snowy area on Venus,
I remember Fortuna. I played that one a little bit.
right? And then there was Deimos, which was like an infested area, which is it's like a moon or something, or like a comet. I don't know. It's like some kind of like infested fucking like shithole. There's a lot of stuff. It's just like an infested open world area. After that, they added like I'm not gonna really like continue to like spoil and whatever, but basically, I wasn't sure how they were going to approach like level design, but 1999 takes place in essentially an alternate universe, like to like the modern day. It's like they don't like have like it's not
Okay,
like
so if you play through 1999, you get. I'm assuming they are introducing new weapons and gear and armor and everything.
there's a couple. There's not as many new weapons as I had actually hoped. There's like kind of like two modern weapons. There's like basically an AK and a silenced like USP pistol kind of sort of
Okay.
thing.
But can you bring that stuff with you to other
That-
missions in the game?
That
Oh,
was
yeah,
gonna be
100%.
that was going to be my question too, because from the announcement, because obviously I don't follow it, it sounded to me like it was going to be like a sequel or a spin-off, but you guys are making it sound like it's more of an update to the existing game. So
See, that's how
No,
like,
no.
whenever Warframe puts out a big expansion size update to the game, I never really consider it an expansion because they never reset anything. I just consider it a major title update, which I think is
Okay.
like there's
So,
a
yeah,
fine line between those two titles.
Yeah, I guess I understand what a title update is. It's just when it was shown off, like it looked to me, somebody who sees Warframe in passing, it looked like it was supposed to be a spin-off or a main game. Like I've seen trailers for title updates before from
Yeah.
Warframe, just
Yeah.
from knowing you guys who play it. 1999, like just from the setting, the trailer, the different enemies, everything about it seemed like it was like either an expansion or a side
Or a
mode
spin-off,
or
yeah.
a spin-off.
Right.
Yeah,
When
exactly.
I first saw the trailer, I thought it was a spin-off game. I did not think that it was going to be an update to the existing game.
Yeah, I was not
Apparently,
sure.
on the same note as Warframe in general, I mean, Joe, I assume that you keep up to date with what Soulframe is shaping up to be. It does not look good, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't really know. I feel like they kind of like tested the kind of like the waters with Deviri, which I'm not sure if you tried that update.
No, I don't think I have.
Yeah, Deviri is kind of like it's like an alternate start to Warframe, which
Okay.
is like I said. So like remember how I was saying like Digital Extremes, they like to do this thing where they kind of like create like sort of like content islands in Warframe. They did it a lot, and like some people complain about that. I think it's like actually not that bad.
It's a way to test new things, you know. I think
right.
that's fine. It's like,
Like-
it's
like-
a testing bed or like a backdoor pilot to like a TV show. It's like they're trying to kick something else off in
Yeah.
these like smaller areas.
and they make it a part of the game in some way. Like they make it so that, like, you know, for Deviri, it's Deviri is basically when you start, if you were to create an account right now, as far as I'm aware, you would have two ways that you could start the game. You could start as the operator, or you could start as the drifter. The operator is like the little child. The drifter is like the adult who starts in the plains of Deviri. And Deviri is like kind of like a roguelike, or like a roguelite experience.
Oh, you know what? I did play Deviri because I
Yes.
remember the roguelike element to it, and that's when I got back into Warframe after a
Right.
long hiatus. So yes, I did play Deviri.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of a content island, because you can, when you're playing in Deviri, you can kind of like upgrade your operator or drifter or whatever, and those upgrades will carry over into regular gameplay. Like that, it's something. It's a way to like grow, but it's also not something you have to do forever, and isn't necessarily, I guess, necessary to progress through the entire game. So that's kind of like, that's what that's like. Railjack is kind of in the same vein, and I mean, really, the thing is, 1999 is just another update to Warframe that kind of adds another faction, and it's less
Okay.
complicated. It's less of a content island than like Duviri or Railjack, because it really is more just like another like syndicate to grow with, but there's definitely like more personality, I would say, to it.
Okay.
That was my personal feeling, because what they did was, I'm sure you've seen the updates, so you know that there's, you know, basically a Warframe that, you know, is talking and is a guy, you know, Arthur, whatever, right? You've probably seen him. He's like the titular, you know, Excalibur, right? The sword guy.
I know what Excalibur is, like not the sword, but like the frame.
The frame, yes.
Yeah.
So those, that guy Arthur, he's basically like an Excalibur proto frame. He's basically Excalibur, but he can actually talk because he has a face, you know, and he's a guy. He has like his own.
He's the
like,
one on the key art of the 1999 Steam.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, his name is, you know, Arthur. So, and then there is I'm not gonna count them all in my fucking hands. I'm gonna waste time doing that. There's a whole shit ton of other ones. They are allegedly adding more. And basically, what 1999 did was, that I thought was like very, very good, was they added, in the 1999 update, they added basically this whole Vania, which is like, I guess they're kind of like fictional city somewhere. It kind of like seems like almost Eastern European, but I can't really tell. It's like, it's called Holvania. It's, you know, I don't know, but it's basically an urban tile set with like but it's a tile set, so it's not like a set in stone kind of open world area, but it's a tile set of like a city plus a subway system or a mall.
So it's enough that they could expand on this content and use it for further like excursions, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like there's definitely, the thing is, like, I think they've actually previously mentioned that they're considering adding like more of the proto frames, which I haven't really gone into that, but basically, like I said, these, how I said they're like all characters with like more personality and shit. Like the thing is, remember how I mentioned that they do this whole like instant messenger thing?
Yes.
You're basically, part of increasing with this syndicate is talking to these characters, you know, them asking you questions, you can ask them questions, and honestly, it kind of divulges like it gives a lot more like exposition than you would really normally encounter. So you like you learn a lot about like what the fuck like the world of Warframe is even about, or like how it's supposed to like make sense and stuff like that.
Yeah, I have almost 50 hours logged in Warframe, which is like a drop in the bucket for other people. But I still
Considering
have
it's been going on
almost
12 years.
Yeah, but I still have almost no fucking clue how this game works.
It is from the beginning. It was very convoluted. We didn't really know what the hell we were in the first place for like years in, and then they kind of dropped the ball on us with the fucking operator update. But man,
I always find it funny because I think about it, and it's just from pure ignorance of not really grasping the story. And obviously, when I was the most active in it, there wasn't a whole lot of story to speak of. I always just funnily go back to, I'm like, yeah, it's the kind of sequel to Dark Sector. You know, the guy was named Tenno,
really.
and now there are Tenno involved. You know, there are Tenno everywhere now.
Tenno adjacent.
They're being mobilized or something, and that's the story of Warframe.
Exactly. Anthony really liked that fucking Orders quote, and then they removed it at some point. He doesn't say it anymore.
Are you fucking kidding me? What's even there for me to go back to if I wanted to play this fucking game?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's
all right.
It's
well, okay. We've spoken enough about Warframe.
Dan, you're all caught up. You got everything you wanted. You
I wanted to know what the update.
For some knowledge.
I didn't. Yeah. I almost didn't scratch the surface because I didn't even get to mention.
I believe you.
the fucking there's you can actually like fucking date the members of the Hex. That's one of the big draws of the game, because I guess Rebecca kind of like took the lead on that sort of thing, and now she put that in the game, and it's some people like that kind of thing. You know, I'm not, I don't really feel particular affection for fictional characters, so I don't really care that much about it. But I think the dialogue is interesting, if nothing else.
It's a nice little side. It's not mandatory content, you know, that people, you know, spec into. It's the same as like a Mass Effect. You like the characters, you want to go down that route, why don't you? You know, see, that's it. That's an easy sell that you can add to people, is that kind of thing, I think. And I think a lot of games that could have it sleep on it just because it's like they don't feel like doing it or whatever. So I can see that appealing to more than a few people.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving on. I think probably one of the biggest news stories of the week, as far as the gaming sphere overall is concerned, is, in my opinion, probably the announcement of the RTX 5000 series. I mean, it's not like nothing groundbreaking. We all knew it was coming. But now there's a new generation of graphics cards, and they keep on boasting the price to performance ratio and how it's so much better. And now they really stress the fact this time that AI is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting with like frame generation and stuff. So,
I mean, my only 2 cents on that is just because it's like when because they're doing the whole presentation, right? So they have the screen behind the guy, and it's just like there's like 8 companies involved, and between those 8 companies, there's like 6 services each, 5 to 6 services, something like that. So it's a shit ton of processes running in there, and I've just got to say, like, I think, and I know me and you talked about this at a certain point, Dan, that I think that AI has its place in the workflow. The frame generation that, like, what you just mentioned, I've seen it in action, unless it's like been drastically improved, and I mean more than just like spokesman standing on stage telling you it's been improved. It's not all that, in my opinion.
Well, I think it's really more of a question of how much better does it make the game run. Like, if it's a really high graphically intensive game that even the most cutting edge graphics cards have trouble running it at the complete highest settings. If the AI can make the game run like 50% better, then I think that's really what they're going for here. Now, what?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. I think it was the middle of the road GPU, maybe the lower end was like $550. Supposedly is supposed to boast the same performance level as the 4090 Ti, which is, I mean, that's fucking crazy, because the 4090 was like a $2,000 graphics card.
Yeah, so, I'm wary about this next generation. I mean, here's the thing. Regardless, in just about all cases, when you go up a generation, just because of Moore's law, you're getting more out of what you're buying. That's just a given, right? I think this generation, more than others in the past, and I think even more going forward, is like when we get down to it and people get their hands on these cards and they start digging into exactly what we're getting out of them, people are going to see like inflated numbers from the AI shit, and I'm not keen on that. Like I said,
well,
AI,
all those numbers are from the best possible case scenario of
Yeah, that's
anything
what-
running on the GPU.
That's what I'm saying, and it's like normal. You know, the three of us, we're not fucking stupid. Like obviously, when people are saying the absolute best of the best, this is what we're showing on the stage floor. It's always going to be inflated to some degree, or they're fine tuning it to be as optimal as possible so that they can sell these fucking cards. But what I'm saying is, when it comes down to it, I think, like, let's say there's like a 200% performance boost, right? Just a random number out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that we're gonna see that like maybe 150% of that is going to be from like just the AI splicing things together on the fly and less of a hardware boost, and I don't like that. I think that's a bad move for the card. And I mean, it ties into a lot of the things we say about the industry, where like we need more than we should as far as processing power to manage these games which aren't as optimized as they used to be. We don't really need to be throwing AI into the mix. Like, we don't need a game that's unoptimized and runs poorly, and in the gaps where it's running poorly, the AI is going to try and keep up. It's just it's going to devolve into a mess if we keep up in this.
I don't disagree, but on the other hand, like, you know, Nvidia aren't the ones making the game, and if the developers making the game aren't going to optimize their game, then where is, like, the performance gap needs to be made up somewhere. So if they decide to use AI on these cards to make up that performance gap, and I think, like, if you sat one of the three of us down in front of the 5000 series and had all the settings of a game turned up, and this AI is running on the card to make it run as smoothly as possible, I feel like we would be able to pick up the tells on the rendering as far as where it's making the compromise. Whereas, like, the average schmuck who just pays $500 for a graphics card that just wants to run, you know, like Cyberpunk, for example, they just want to run Cyberpunk on the best possible settings that their system can handle with this newest graphics card. I don't think they're really going to be looking that hard, and I think that's where all of the sales numbers are going to be coming from.
Yeah, I think that's true, and that's kind of like the asinine bit of it, because like, what are we really doing here if it's like, oh, this card is really for the people who just want to run everything on the highest possible graphics, but then the highest possible graphics don't look that great because of all the cut corners they need to do. Like, it's like it's another one of those situations where I know it's not you, I know it's not me, I know it's not Joe, but like, other people are doing it, and I just have to ask that question again. It's like, what are we doing here?
So
you go ahead, Joe.
I'm kind of pretend I'm a complete and utter layman here. Like, it's so essentially these cards basically just kind of do guesswork when.
It's a lot of inference, is what the Jensen was making it sound like.
Yeah, that's how the AI operates. But there's a technology that we've seen in the past, Dan, that me and you have definitely encountered before. That kind of is a similar concept, where it's like fake frames. Like, what would this? If you don't remember, I'm not going to remember. There's been a technology that was like in vogue, so to speak, in the 2010s, where it's like the fake out there was the game was rendering every other frame, and they were doing something to fake the
I don't know what that tech was called.
But you know that there was technology like that, right?
Yeah, no, I'm aware.
I think what they're doing now is they're basically splitting AI into the cracks. And basically, Joe, to kind of give you an extreme example, is, let's say, because I saw videos of like some of the more rudimentary AI stuff, and I'm not saying it's all going to look like this, but I'm saying this is the kind of stuff you can expect. Is, let's just say you're in a first-person shooter and you go to a well-lit hallway, right? And your character's in all black and the gun's all black, and you just, for some reason, you decide to look up and down very quickly. You will get what I can only describe as a ghosting effect on the gun as the AI tries to like keep up with your erratic movements in a high contrast area. And I'm not saying all situations with AI are going to look like that, but that's the kind of idea. Is, like Dan said, there's part of it's inference, but the other part of it is like where the game is cutting itself up in order for AI to fill the cracks, in order for you to feel a performance boost.
So basically what you're saying is, when in a situation where you ordinarily would not be able to see the gun in the first place, nor make out anything else, the AI will basically try to like show you something that it knows is there.
Yes.
Or knows it's supposed to be there.
Yes.
Even though you ordinarily would not be able to see it. Okay,
yes. Imagine you just like, or just like look around your room slowly, and imagine that you're recording it over the span of 10 seconds, but obviously it's down to frames. Like, imagine every other second, every other frame is an AI figuring out what goes in between, you know, part A and part C, right? That's what that's going to be.
I suppose that, like, see, that doesn't sound like the worst. I thought basically that it was going to be something akin to almost like motion blur, which sounded
That's what it's going to look like. That's what it's going to look like. When I say ghosting, motion blur ghosting is kind of the same thing. Ghosting is more of a bad byproduct. Motion blur is an intentional design choice, but they're going to look the same.
I suppose I would have to say, like, I'm probably
but again,
not gonna buy
you
it
really
anyway,
have
but...
to go looking for that kind of thing. You
Right.
know, if you just want the best experience out of your game, and you don't really care, or I guess you don't care enough about how you get to that final destination, then you know you buying a $550 GPU isn't really going to be the end of the world if you're going to get like 120 frames out of the game, and you don't really have to do much tweaking to get it to that point.
I guess, like I said, it really just comes down to an informed consumer thing. Just because it's like I said, I understand where you're coming from, and I understand what you're saying, where it's just like people aren't really going to notice, but at the same time, if they're not going to notice, why are they paying for these ridiculously expensive cards? You know.
Well, apparently the cards aren't supposed to be ridiculously expensive anymore.
$550 is pretty expensive to get a diminishing year-over-year return, in my opinion.
I mean, relatively speaking, from like the high-end cards being like $1,500, I think the highest end 5000 series was like $1,600.
I mean, my card
550 is not that terrible.
Yeah, that's less than half of what my card is worth. So that's actually not that bad, depending on how it actually performs.
I'm saying, I'm just my biggest gripe, and it's like I said, is I think AI has a place in all of this. It's not in, like, this is just another thing that, like, me and you, Dan, and Joe, you've been here for a couple of these conversations where we talk about console hardware, as an example, has been getting better and better and better, but the games haven't been getting better and better and better necessarily, right? Because people aren't necessarily as experienced in creating those experiences to take advantage of the hardware. Now we're in a situation where graphics cards have built-in cut corners on top of all this built-in stuff. It's not a good look.
So this is really like a chicken or the egg conversation. Like,
he's basically saying that what this card is. I'm assuming what you're saying is basically what this card is doing is it's adding training wheels to game development.
Yeah, you could look at it that way. That's a problem for me. But my also is like, look, like I'm saying, these cards will fundamentally run better than the last generation of cards. I don't doubt that. What I'm saying is that we're sacrificing what is likely more than half of the year-over-year increase in processing power for something that is experimental and may not, in the long term, is not something that we as an industry should be utilizing. Like, you should be using that kind of... I have a feeling this is really just related to us in gaming. Those same AI-powered features that we're talking about are probably going to be stellar for people in creative fields, just because it's more of a setting that's going to be turned on as you create, and it's going to be managed by the user. But for gaming as like kind of this band-aid to like give you the illusion of the game running even better, it's like, oh, I can run at 240 frames now, but like every other frame looks like shit. I don't see the point. But I think
we would have to sit you down in front of the game and see and get your final opinion of like, how good does this game look on this card?
Listen, I'm not saying inherently it's a bad thing that's just going to fail. It's just I've seen how these AI functions do fail, and I'm just saying, like, if we get to that point, it's just, again, it's like, what are we doing here? Like, I've seen like the cracks of this. And I'm not saying it's going to be like an astronomical issue. We're not heading towards like a total system failure. I'm just saying I'm not as wowed or impressed by these cards based on what they're selling, like in between the lines. You know, it's like, oh, you know, this game you wouldn't be able to possibly run it this way without this or that and the other thing. And it's like, when you really listen to what they were talking about with these cards, it's something that's just not necessarily all that great. And it kind of also factors into my opinion on AI in general, where it's just like unfettered. You know, it's like, why would you do that? I much it's basically taking the creator out of the creative process with AI, and it's just like, oh, the AI is going to figure it out as you play, which is just like, I don't, randomly generated shit, and the AI just trying to figure out isn't something that is good. I think we're going to see when these cards hit the consumer hands, and people, it's like one of those things you don't see until millions of people have their hands on it and start stress testing it. We're going to start seeing more of these things pop up, because there's already a good amount that you can go out and see of the technology they were talking about in a much earlier place, and that's just my take on it.
Yeah, it'll probably come down to people like really just like the feedback of how the things actually turn out when people are using them. Like there's probably a lot of people who will probably think it's fine. I think people who play games on consoles and don't.
Well, that's
really
why I mentioned before, like the average schmuck who buys this thing isn't really gonna know the difference between AI generated frames and like the game running natively.
Right.
Yeah, but
and then there's people who like are very into that sort of thing who will probably like more than definitely notice the difference.
Yeah,
and may or may not appreciate it.
I get what you're talking about, what you guys are saying, and I don't want to go in circles, because it is you like you mentioned chicken and egg, and we've had conversations like this before, but I just want to say it's just like, if we're really talking about like, we're going to notice and high-end users are going to notice, and the only people who aren't going to notice are the schmucks that are only buying it to get the best, but they're not really getting the best. I just have to, it's like, what are we doing here? That's so like
by that argument, like the best possible card at this point would probably be the 4090 Ti.
Yeah, go get ready to swoop in and buy those when these new cards come out. That's my suggestion.
I mean, look, the prices for those are probably going to plummet once the 5000 series comes out, which is great. I would love to upgrade to a 4090 Ti.
So would I, believe it or not.
Yeah, no shit. Get your shit together, Anthony, and upgrade your computer.
Ad revenue's going up. We're getting closer.
Oh my god, you chat my ass so much.
You just want to play Helldivers. Joe's here. Invite him to play Helldivers.
Fucking sue me. I want to play Helldivers with my buddy.
Don't you have Josh now? Isn't that a thing?
Doesn't matter. It's not the same.
I know. I just wanted to hear you say it.
All right. I mean, I have a bunch of my shit lined up, but if anyone else wants to throw a story out there, then by all means.
Well, yeah, I'll just touch on something real quick, because this is kind of like a funny story, and I'm sure Joe will have something to say about this, because this is kind of funny. We've been keeping it too light talking about technology and video games. I want to talk about the Chinese government.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Did you guys hear what the U.S. government said about Tencent the other day?
Are you talking about how the U.S. government designated Tencent as a Chinese military company?
Yes. And I thought that was hysterical. Just because of like, at first you kind of look at that and you're just like, oh, it's like maybe it's a bit of a snafu, and then like the designation doesn't go anywhere, and that's when you really start laughing. It's like, let's just confront the facts here, guys. I think anyone with a lick of sense knows that companies like Tencent, when you get that big, or if you just like exist in China, the Chinese government
just existence in that part of the world,
just exist in China, the Chinese government will have their hands in you, not on you, in you. Yes. Like they will just be all over you. So Tencent is definitely the kind of company I would say they definitely are very much invested in, which is why there's a lot to say about, like, we talk a lot about the modern policies that have kind of just been dragging everything down across the globe. Tencent's, oddly enough, they're immune to a lot of that, except for when it's against their own people. They're very weird, but you can, just that disparity, you can tell that the government is involved. But generally speaking, they're massive at this point. Do I think that Tencent is a military company? I don't think so.
You don't know what goes on behind closed doors.
All right, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen right now. Anthony's going to boot up Genshin Impact, and immediately the cops are going to bust down his fucking door and turn him into a sock puppet.
Listen. Do I think they're a military company directly? No. Do I think they have a firm, good, or at least neutral moral alignment, free of government meddling? Absolutely fucking not.
Like, sounds like something a traitor would say. You treasonous fuck.
Listen. It would not surprise me. It would not surprise me if there is a thread to follow that leads to the Chinese government and military in a direct monetary, direct monetary fashion. There's already that little subversive element where it's just like, oh, we control a massive game company that owns like 5 to 20% in a shit ton of things, and we aren't holding them to the same standards that we're funding them overseas, like diversity and inclusion and all this shit. That's throttling everything else. It's like, our guys are immune to that, but only to a certain point, because we're also still weird about porn and skeletons and shit like that, right?
Skeletons.
Porn I get, but
it's skeleton. There's something about skeletons and skulls when it comes to like Chinese mysticism. It's why a lot of things get censored over there. But anyway, I digress.
Sorry?
I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk about China. I don't want to talk about China that much. I just want to get.
You just want to talk about skeletons either.
So basically, don't mention skeletons, please. Anyway, so. What I'm just saying is, like, I just wanted to see if you guys heard about that, and obviously Joe and me have a lot of opinions about Tencent. I know you do too, Dan. But what I find very funny about this is I first heard about this like a week ago, and you kind of figure somewhere along the chain, like everybody will like, oh, that was a mistake, or oh, we didn't mean to do that. And so far, the only person who has stepped forward to say it's a mistake is a spokesperson for Tencent. They're still designated a military company, so figure that one out. Oh, that was pretty
There's nothing
funny.
to figure out. They're in China. They're part of the fucking government.
It's very true. I just find it funny that it's
rise up.
Because I always say this to the two of you. I'm just like, listen, when it comes to serious business or cultural shit, hobbies are the last place that it hits, whether it's, to like have these problems alleviated or addressed. But the government just out of the blue just said, Tencent's a military company. They're probably doing all the bad things that you're doing, or you should just assume that they're just not above the bar, So I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, that's a thing.
Yeah.
What else we got? Let's see. Ubisoft. That's a good one.
Oh, good lord. They are dying.
Okay, hold on. Let me just read this headline.
Go ahead.
Ubisoft today, I don't know, wait, when did you post this? What does today mean? That was on the 9th?
Where is it? Yeah, just whatever date I saw.
Yeah, Ubisoft today confirmed that leading advisors have been hired to look at transformational, strategic, and capitalistic options to extract the best value for stakeholders.
Yeah.
So, it's only a fucking matter of time before they get absorbed by somebody. And the CEO, Yves Guillemot, something like that, never get his name right.
I fucking all the time.
He's just fucking delusional, man. So apparently, and I looked into this a little bit. I was curious. So the Guillemot family, because it's a whole family that has like the majority stakeholding in Ubisoft.
Yes.
They are very keen to sell the company, right? That's not really the issue in question.
Yes.
And the big problem is that, the big problem with that is once they sell, one of their demands / requirements / conditions, whatever you want to call it, they want to remain like essentially in charge of Ubisoft after essentially driving into the fucking ground
they
over the last 15 years.
Creative control still, which is crazy.
Yeah,
to
because
me.
that's gonna fly.
I think here's the thing. I think it's the kind of scummy tactic that they could pull off if the only thing holding them back is I'm pretty sure Tencent is the one looking is like the biggest potential buyer out there right now, and I think it's got them sweating a little bit because
it's a shame too because there are so many quality IPs under the Ubisoft banner that they have not done fuck all with over the past 10 years.
Oh, yeah,
but
absolutely.
they just let them squander. Like, I am not that crazy about Watch Dogs. I really enjoyed 1. I didn't really care for 2 or Legion. But, you could do so much with fucking, what does Ubisoft have? Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Watch Dogs. I mean, those are the top 3 that come to mind. I know there's more. Splinter Cell. Yeah. What else? There's more. There's definitely more than that.
Rayman is a classic platformer that had like a breath of fresh air when what was it? Legends came out. Like, and then everybody was all about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have done nothing but squander their outrageously popular IPs over the past decade. And now they have the balls to say we still want complete creative control once somebody essentially bails us out, like what, with no strings attached? Fuck off. Like, this is ridiculous.
That's one of the earliest things in this whole talk of like potential bankruptcy or buyouts or liquidation and all that is that family has very much been like, oh, well, we still want creative control. They basically just want a blank slate.
How do you think that's going to work?
Yeah, and it's like they are the kinds of they're the guys that are like deep into the Kool-Aid on all this stuff. Like they're true believers. Like I think it was the head, whatever his name is. I can't pronounce his name any better than you pronounce his name.
I know it's Gilman or something like that.
Yes, he is the guy that he like. Even as like the ship is burning to the the ship is sinking, the building's burning to the ground. He is sitting there going, games need to affect change. You should walk away, you know, with a changed perspective when you play a phenomenal video game. Like he's sitting there.
Why can't a game just be a fun game? Like what?
Because you
I
are
play
being
a game
defiant.
and I'm affected by it. Now I want to kill myself.
Oh yeah, X Defiant. There's another one.
Oh, X Defiant was great. Like I told Dan, Joe wasn't here for this, but I told you, Dan, it's like they like essentially just released a dev build, and like if you had previously downloaded X Defiant, that's the version you're playing now, and it's just like everything's unlocked, stuff that wasn't finished you can play as, and it's just like everything is just on fire at Ubisoft. Assassin's Creed Shadows got delayed again. That is like their I mean, before it was like this is their one saving grace. I don't even think if it did phenomenally, it would save them from like it would. I forget what it was described as. It was like the worst year they've ever faced in the history of the company.
And it only gets worse year over year.
It's only gonna get worse. Especially it's like even if that game did spectacularly, I don't think it would save the company. And now it's delayed again to March. It went from, you know, releasing in Black History Month to releasing on the anniversary of the biggest terrorist attack in Japan's history. Hysterical. I don't know how they keep picking these fucking dates, man. It's like, I understand it's like, oh, it's a business thing. You're not actually, you know, looking for these dates, but it's so funny to me that they fucked up twice on like, you know, you have people going like, oh, you know, the racial stuff is kind of weird, and you're using like these landmarks that, you know, represent tragedy in your marketing, and you're stealing banners and shit, and you're releasing the game on like one of the biggest the anniversary of one of the biggest terrorist attacks in the history of the country. Like, what are you doing here? Like, optics. I've heard you're supposed to pay attention to the fucking optics. Where are the optics? I don't get it. What's going on? But I guess
so fucked.
The long and short is that Ubisoft is fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah,
one way or another, it's not going to end well for them. And I really hope that once they do inevitably get bought out, that family is just not in charge. Like, they had a good run from, like, what, 2000 to 2015, maybe? But it's just not the same anymore. The Division, there's another one.
That's what I was saying, is that, like, I feel like Ubisoft is, like, I don't know if they've been in charge, like, whoever you're saying is, like, has been in charge, like, the entire time. I don't really have, like,
He's been in charge since, like, the late 90s, or the early 90s or the late 80s.
It's so weird, because they haven't, like, it's like, when they make something unique and original, they're not, like, the worst at it, you know what I mean? They can make good shit. Yeah. But they, like, they undersell themselves.
Yeah, I find it very funny that, like, Ubisoft used to be synonymous with innovation back in like 2005.
These phenomenal brand new IPs. Yeah. They are the one thing I always said about Ubisoft, and it's not because of their talent, but just from the raw power of the IPs they kept making and just held on to over the years. Potential. You know, put these IPs in the hands of good developers, and you just have a slam dunk. The groundwork is laid.
I remember when Assassin's Creed, like the original, first came out. It was the coolest shit I've ever put my hands on, like, back then.
That's what I'm saying. Well, so like a lot of people say that like they are not particularly fond of like the first trilogy of the Assassin's Creed games.
That's
I don't
outrageous.
really know. I know. I agree. I those are my favorite ones.
Yeah, they're the best.
But the thing is, and this is what I'm saying, is like they are good at they've made a lot of unique stuff in the past. Like, and you were saying like Watch Dogs. The first Watch Dogs, that game was fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, it was really good.
It was very, very good. It was like it's like probably one of my favorite games. Same with
it was like GTA, but cooler.
Yeah, and like I love the protagonist, fucking Aiden or whatever. It was Aiden, right?
Aiden Pierce.
Aiden Pierce. Yeah. Yes. He was like the characters are good. Desmond was cool. Altair, Ezio, Connor. You know, like there's nothing like they are okay. They're good at making games. They can make good games, and they can make do with like unique ideas that they have, and that's probably why like they see like so much success with games like Black Flag, even though that like I personally feel that's a better pirate game than an Assassin's Creed game. and that's fine. Like
You
I
mean
get it.
Skull and Bones, the first quadruple A
Like
game
they should.
ever published, was not like good, better than Assassin's Creed Black Flag.
I'm just saying, like if they took, it felt more about like sailing and being a pirate than like being an assassin, and that's like when Unity came out, that felt like more of a return to what Assassin's Creed is than Black Flag. Like when they added the sailing shit in Assassin's Creed 3, it felt like kind of like out of place. But people, I guess it was a well received facet of the game, so they like basically made a fucking game centered around it in Black Flag,
Yeah.
right?
And
So-
Rogue too, technically.
Yeah.
Right. I never actually played Rogue. That's
Rogue's a lot of
That
fun.
was the one Assassin's Creed game from that era that I'd never played either.
right.
I recommend it. It's available.
Wasn't
on
it
different
only on like the 360 back when
Yes,
the
that
Xbox
was
One?
when they did like a simultaneous release of one
Yeah, like
game
what
for the
a
next gen and
weird
one for the
design
360.
choice.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I would say Rogue, if you guys ever get a chance to try it and you like the old Assassin's Creed games, it's not gonna blow your socks off, but give Rogue a shot.
Yeah. I'm just
Yeah, I've
saying
tried
that
it,
like
actually.
I think that like all of that stuff is like evidence that like they can make unique things and they can make good stuff. And I don't know if they can still do that. Probably not. But
Yeah.
they could and they did and if these people were in charge the whole time, I don't know what the fuck happened to them cuz like I guess maybe they lost confidence in themselves or something cuz like I mean if you look back at it, like I said, like Origins that came out around the same time as the fucking Witcher 3.
I do not like those newer Assassin's Creed games where it's basically an RPG.
That's the thing.
They went for the Witcher audience.
Yeah,
That's
no,
what
I'm not
that's
a
what I'm
fan.
saying is that like The Witcher 3 is in my opinion one of the best games of all time. I would say that like I got so lost in that game playing it that like I never actually beat it because I was so absorbed in the fucking side quests because all of the side quests are so good and well written and engaging that I completely forgot what the fuck I was really supposed to be doing the entire time. I just got absorbed in being a Witcher. But I'm digressing. The point is that I think they wanted to go for the audience in that. And now that like the Ghost of Tsushima is like the big thing for a lot of people who play like games on the PlayStation, they're like creating a copy of that in AC Shadows, and it's like why it's like it's embarrassing. It's like it's almost like they're like posers. You know, they don't believe in the franchise that they have anymore for whatever reason. I don't know if it like really sold that badly, but like why not just make a new product or something? I don't really get it.
I mean, there will be a time to dissect like the history of bad choices when Ubisoft is finally bought out or goes under. But I think the two biggest things you're going to find is the one of the things we love to talk about, which is like the big suits at the top saying X and Y need to evolve or innovate, otherwise people are going to get tired of them. And at the same time, you're also going to have just over time turnover of talent, like the same people that made the trilogy and the trilogies within trilogies that we played and we enjoyed. I don't think at a certain point they just weren't with the company anymore, and it was probably around the time that they started focusing on, like, it was probably those two dovetailing together right around the time when they started experimenting with a more Witcher-esque formula. I think you'll take a look and you'll see like a lot of essential personnel, like the people, not just the big names that everybody knows, but like the people that carry the game on its back with like polish and coding and things like that just weren't around anymore. Maybe even as early as Unity, I don't know. But we'll, like I said, there will be a time and a place where you'll be able to pinpoint exactly what happened. But I think it's going to be a mixture of you got to change it so that we're hip with the times, and also we're talking to a completely different team than what we used to have. I think that's what you're going to find.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah,
It's a real shame.
like I said,
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Ubisoft. Like I
never
just,
short of
it's
potential.
yeah, their days are numbered, and it's just I mean, I just said it, but it's a matter of time before somebody makes an offer serious enough for them to consider, or they just fold like a house of cards.
They'll be forced to take it at a certain point. It's not about what
Yeah.
they want. I think they're just leveraging, like we talked about, like they want creative control and they're looking for a buyer receptive to that. But at a certain point, it's just going to fall in on themselves, like you said.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
All right. So what else?
There, Dan?
What? No, I'm good actually.
Okay, so there is one little thing that kind of spirals into another thing that I want to talk about. It's short enough, and I just want to get it here while Joe's here, because I sent it to him, and I saw he thought it was pretty funny. But Square Enix put out a little thing recently. Square Enix is technically how it's pronounced. Called a group customer harassment policy. I know Joe probably took a peek at this. I don't. You probably didn't, because it's so basically they put out a long list of things that they consider violations. That it's essentially a warning to other potential players and anyone who's actively playing that they can not only deny you service of their products, but they can also threaten you with legal action. And the two things I want to say about this is, one thing I found out later is apparently this has roots in like certain things that's happening within the Japanese government, where they're taking steps against harassment. But it's like they're doing that over there, and Square Enix saw this and just like took this inch and ran with it and just took a mile with it. And then the people in these companies are going to end up abusing this, because let me just give you a brief rundown of what's included in this fucking thing as things you shouldn't do, all right? First and foremost, I just want to say there's some reasonable stuff in here, like physical violence. Don't do that. Don't stalk employees. Don't do that. Don't trespass on company property. That shit makes sense, right? You guys can agree with me on that? That makes sense?
Nah.
Yeah.
Okay. I know Joe's gonna have to cancel his plans at Square Enix headquarters, because
I was going straight to LA tomorrow. I was gonna party on top of their fucking roof.
And you gotta have a stern talking to about the Final Fantasy XIV housing systems, because you're just not getting through to them anymore. But here's a list of things that kind of made me raise my eyebrow of what you're not supposed to do, where they're threatening you with potential legal action or like denial of service, right? Discriminatory speech, persistent inquiries, defamation and slander, denial of person's dignity, personal attacks, unreasonable demands or changes to a product, or for changes of a product, unreasonable demands for responses or apologies, unreasonable and excessive demands for punishment of employees. Now, I'm an old-fashioned kind of guy. My buddy here, Joe, Dan, has been very vocal on the Square Enix forums about changes that should be made to a game that we've collectively been playing for, I would say, like a decade, right, Joe? That's accurate?
Yeah.
Since Final Fantasy XIV. Okay. Playing on and off, not straight, obviously, and Joe's played a little bit more than me during the downtime, especially during Stormblood, but call me crazy. I don't think Joe bitching about the housing system in that game should warrant legal action against him. And I'm not saying that they're gonna kick down the door, but the fact that they're openly saying like, if we feel like it, we'll do it, is a little stunning to me.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
the fact that they even said it at all is a little like,
yeah.
It's like I like, you can say call me crazy. I feel like there's a very clear cut line where trespassing, stalking employees, and violence. I feel like there's a very clear line there, for criminal activity that kind of is a cutoff between saying hey, you can't talk shit about us.
Yeah, that's what it comes off as. That's what it fucking comes off as. Because this, I know I mentioned this has to do with this. It has its roots in Japanese government shit, right? But this also follows they announced a couple things happened. Dragon's Quest 3 got that remake, and it was heavily censored, and people complained about it to the point where it was mentioned by developers, and they never re-uploaded an interview where the developers were complaining about it. And also, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's coming to the PC, and the producers came out and said, hey, please don't make lewd mods of our characters, and they got ridiculed for that one. They got raked over the coals for making that kind of, you're gonna stop the fucking internet from doing that. And recently, with the latest Final Fantasy XIV expansion, it was getting, some mixed reviews because of, certain characters and certain voice actors in that game, to the point where the lead producer came out and he was all distressed. He's like, take that up with me. Don't take it up with my employees. So I just find it funny that even though it has legitimate roots in Japan, I picture that they just got fucking sick and tired of Joe asking for things in the game and people like him, so they're just we will sue you. We will take everything you own if you bitch about the housing situation one more time.
Now it's a legally binding document.
Yeah, exactly. And
Don't ask us for anything, and don't even ask us to say sorry. Basically,
exactly. That was the most crazy. That was a crazy thing. Don't demand responses or apologies from us. Like if we don't say anything to you, that just means just give up, basically. And,
I mean, you could just like follow, just have follow the fucking uphold the status quo and just ignore me. I mean, you don't really have to say. It's not like I served them a fucking like letter or like a like a fucking cease and desist. You cannot ignore me because I'm complaining about your fucking shitty game. Like it's just ignore my ass if you really can't stand it and you have nothing to say. You can't tell me I can't talk about it. Like fuck you.
Well, apparently they can now, and I just wanted to get that one out there because number one, it's obviously I find it funny because me and Joe have had multiple talks about like just the quality of just Final Fantasy 14 in general, but Square Enix in general. And the other thing to note is that, I mean, digitally, a lot of these companies will just take that opportunity to say like, hey, we're tired of the X or Y. If you try and say this, if you try and complain, or if you just break some imaginary rule we set up, we're going to deny you service or we'll take action against you. Warner Brothers Games did it at a certain point with Mortal Kombat 1. Epic Games recently did something too that has to do with their accounts. It's always something to keep a lookout for because while it's silly and while it's funny, these companies will do whatever it takes to escape like culpability and responsibility to all these things. If there's one thing that the last decade has taught us, aside from all the bullshit we had to deal with, is these companies will do whatever it takes to not admit fault, more so than ever before. So that's just, another thing to look out for. But that's pretty funny that Square Enix basically said, fuck you, please stop asking us for things, It's a small indie company.
Nobody's allowed to make fun of me.
Exactly. But I think that's that wraps it for this week.
I think so. I got nothing else, and yeah, I don't know. It was good to have Joe back.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. I'm glad that the schedule is lined up. Hopefully, this with this change in schedule, hopefully we see Joe more often. My good buddy, good pal, because it's always a pleasure to have him here, and it was a breath of fresh air. He missed quite a bit. He seemed a little surprised during that what we've been playing segment, but it was good to have him back, and hope to see you next week and weeks or some point in the future for these little sessions of ours.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I mean, that was episode 38. Yeah, 38. Yeah, just fucking crazy, man. We're almost at 50 already. Damn.
Only gonna get higher from here.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, that was the Pregame Network podcast, episode 38. We'll be back next week with 39, obviously. And on that note, thanks for listening. All 30 of you.
Hey, that number goes up.
That number goes up. I know. That was me saying that in a positive sense.
Yes.
That number always goes up. That's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. Well, we'll see everybody next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wait.